Walking out, looking for souvenirs. We're out in Manger Square, and loud speakerphone, or somebody was speaking that night. Really wasn't paying attention to it. So we slept at like 1 a.m. because I was posting on Facebook to try and document our trip. Each day I was posting it, and I was getting kicked off Wi-Fi. I kid you not, like at least 20 times. So it took me like a few hours to even post something. So 1 a.m. and our wake-up call is at 6:30 for breakfast, right? So I'm like, okay, good, I got 5.5 hours of sleep is what I'm gonna get. So we get woken up by this megaphone, speakerphone, and it's chanting, and it's off key. From Manger Square, Rod's like, it must be 6:30. I'm like, what time is it, hon? He's like, are you kidding me? It's 4:53 a.m. It went on for an hour, and it was the Muslims in Manger Square. They do this every single morning where Bethlehem hears them, and they're praying, and it's off key. And so at that moment, I struggled with loving your neighbor, because I went to sleep at 1 a.m., but I remembered we gotta love our neighbor. So although it was frustrating, what could we do? We didn't expect it, but it was a high order for God. It's a commandment, love your neighbor. So although it was an early wake-up call, and the Christians there aren't persecuted right now, but they're leaving because they are discriminated right now. So at one, they may be persecuted in the future. So we're talking to a Christian shop owner. He says it's very difficult. We're discriminated against here. He doesn't know how long he's going to be able to stick it out there. But anyway, if we could pray for them there, and definitely God is asking us to love our neighbor. I mean, it's a high order to be calling us to, because we may not agree with some ways, but we're still asked to love, right? So this is the first greatest commandment that I read to you earlier. The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. So love God, love your neighbor. No other greater commandments than those. Loving neighbor together with loving God form the core of Christian life. If someone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For the one who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from him, that the one who loves God should love his brother also. 1 John 4:20-21. And a perfect example of loving neighbors, St. John Paul II. Remember back in 1981 when he was almost assassinated? He was shot. He almost died. He went to the prison and forgave that man who tried to assassinate him. What a wonderful example of loving neighbor. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. So Christian love, this is what Christian love is not, okay? It's not having positive feelings, because positive feelings change. Our feelings change. It's not always saying yes. I mean, you don't always have to say yes and be super nice to be Christian, right? Christian love. It's not defensive, self-seeking, or manipulative. That's not what Christian love is. So what is Christian love? Christian love is connected with keeping God's commandments. It's self-sacrificial, and it's committed service to others. So let's take a look at the first one, connected with keeping God's commandments. So, I told you we're part of this Bible study. Deacon Steve Greco asked us, so why did God give us commandments? And how many commandments do we have? 10. Awesome. Why did he give us these commandments? answers. And he said, God loves us so much that he wants us to keep him close to himself. He gave us these commandments to keep us close to himself. Because what happens when we sin? We go further away from him. We break our relationship with him. So we go further away from him, and that's not what he wants, because he wants us to draw closer to him and be close to him. So just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. John 15, 9, 10. Now what I love about John, and we study the book of John as I mentioned, is he likes to repeat things and to say things in different ways, but it's the same thing. And it's great for me because it helps me remember. Because he'll say, like, love your neighbor, and he'll say it in a different way. So, for instance, this is from John. I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. So you also should love one another. John 13:34. Then he says in another way, this is my commandment. Love one another as I love you. John 15:12. And then he says, if you didn't get it that time or the first time, this I command you, love one another. John 15:17. I love this guy because for me and my memory, I mean, this repetitive message of love your neighbor, this is what I command you, or I command you, love your neighbor. I mean, it's a commandment. And he's repeating it because it's important. It's also in 1 Peter 1:22, love one another intensely from a pure heart. It's seen so many times in the Bible. And I just put this comic strip in it because this guy he's tired of these commands. He wants to jump over the fence, and he's like, wait, it's not a fence, it's a guardrail. Because once you step outside of these commandments, you could fall to your death. That's your eternal death. Like not making it into heaven and being eternally in hell. So he's giving us these commandments to guide us to his heavenly kingdom. Christian love, is also self-sacrificial love. Dying to oneself for the needs of others. Have you guys heard of dying to oneself before? Dying to oneself? It was probably like 8 years ago. I heard it at a talk. I'm like, what do you mean dying to yourself? I've never heard that before. Dying to oneself is giving up what you want or what you need because of your love for another person. You sacrifice what you want because you love someone so much, you want that person to have whatever it is. And as married couples, you could be dying to yourself every single day and not even know it, right? What could it be? It could be cooking, and maybe you don't like to cook, but you have to cook for your spouse or your family, right? It could be, watching sports, and you don't like sports, but you sit there because your spouse likes to watch sports. It could be going shopping because your spouse likes to go shopping, but you don't, but you go anyway. And it could be dying to yourself because you have to pay for that shopping bill. Right? You're like dying. Just like things like that. Or like even as a parent, we die to ourselves so many times. Like for our daughter Tiffany, she's been playing the violin since she was 4 years old. And each time she needed to upgrade her violin, it was expensive. So there was like some type of sacrifice, financial sacrifice each time because we'd want to buy something or we had money allocated, but she needs another new violin? Well, that's like a couple $1,000s at least. So we always had to give up something. Plus, I was a stay-at-home mom for so many years. So there was a lot of sacrifice going on in our family, and our kids didn't even know it. So we do little things every single day to die to ourselves, just through sacrificial love. And in the Bible from John it reads, "No one is greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." John 15:13. You know, on a side note, if you haven't been to the Holy Land, has anybody been to the Holy Land yet? We highly encourage you sometime before retirement. We used to think that only retired people would go off to the Holy Land until I spoke to some coworkers, and they're like younger than me if they've been to the Holy Land. I'm like, oh, okay. So what was amazing about this is we went to Holy Sepulchre Church in Jerusalem, and we were able to touch the ground that Jesus was crucified on. We walked up these steps on Golgotha. They have like this altar, and we were able to touch the ground, and we celebrated Mass like a few feet away from where he died. We were able to see the tomb where Jesus rose from the dead. He wasn't there anymore. We saw the tomb. We were able to touch the stone that Joseph of Arimathea placed Jesus on to get him ready for burial. It's just amazing. And the sacrifice that Jesus made for us, it becomes so real. The Bible just comes to life even more. Christian love is committed service to others. And back in Jesus' time, the lowest thing that you could do for a servant is to wash the feet of others, because they walked in sandals on the dirt for hours. That's how they traveled and got to places. So for somebody to get on their knees, to take that basin of water and wash someone's feet, that was the work of a servant. And for Jesus to do that, to demonstrate that, and to serve others like that, was amazing. He's showing us what we're supposed to do, to have a servant heart for others. If I then, the Lord and the teacher, washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example that you also should do as I did to you. John 13:14-15. So, it's just an example of how we're to take on a servant heart for others. Taking on the lowest of things to do. It doesn't always have to be the lowest things to do. It could just be finding ways to serve others, to serve your family, to serve your spouse. We do this every day. But think of ways of how we could love our neighbor more. How are we as neighbors to others? Because who's our neighbor? Everyone. So these are characteristics of Christian love from St. Paul to the Corinthians. How many of you had this at your wedding? Your wedding day, this scripture? Maybe? You've seen this, right? You're familiar with it? So we had this read at our wedding as well, since we're going on 23 years next month. So it's read, "Love is patient, love is kind, and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." And it later goes on to read, "Love never fails. Love never ends." So these are the characteristics of Christian love. So let's go back to what it was, what Christian love is. It's number one was being committed. Do you remember?
Yes, committed,
being committed to God's commandments and keeping them, staying within those commandments, right? To stay closer to God. It's Christian love. Next one is self-sacrificial love, dying to oneself. That's Christian love. The other is committed service to others. So keeping his commandments, self-sacrificial love, or dying to yourself, and committed service to others. Okay? So these are the characteristics of Christian love. What I'd like you to do is we're going to say something together. So we're working towards having these Christian love characteristics within our own selves, our own lives, okay? So together we're going to read this together. I mean, we're going to say it like we mean it, right? And if ever we fall off course and we feel unloving towards somebody, it could be your spouse, your children, your coworker, whoever it may be, all we have to do is refer back to that scripture and put in I am patient, I am kind. So let's read this together, okay? And say it like you mean it, because you're getting spiritually stronger. All right, ready? I am patient, I am kind, I am not jealous, I do not brag, I am not arrogant, I do not act unbecomingly, I do not seek for my own benefit, I am not provoked, I do not account the wrong suffered, I do not rejoice in unrighteousness, I rejoice with the truth. I bear all things, I believe all things, I hope all things, I endure all things. You're going to need that. We're going to need that. I endure all things, right? In a heated discussion with somebody, I endure all things. I bear all things. I am patient. I am kind. Just got to walk around